So back to the Holmes residence. Here's, first of all, a great little set of working drawings that we get from the architects, or we actually have printed a baby set. What's nice about the baby sets, that we call them, is that you can take them to the job site, you can just take them with you everywhere. Otherwise you'd be carrying around something this size, and it would be so much larger and so much heavier. So the house in and of itself, if you can pan in there a little bit, and you'll see this in the photos too, you can see the steep slope on the site, which really started to delineate some of the height that we have in our interior spaces.
Annette, can you show where the entry is? Where's the main entry?
Oh, yes. So the main entry to the house is actually right up here. So you enter up here, there's 2 garages, and then the main entry, and then you go down a flight of steps onto the main level. So essentially on these plans here, I'm going to go back and start with the first floor, because the entry level is actually the 3rd level. So it's a little bit backwards from how you would normally enter. So you basically enter here. Here's the 3-car garage, actually 3-car garage rather than 2. And then you've got basically all you see from the street is the front of the garage, the front entry, and then the roof line coming through, and then the den up here. So essentially when you walk in, you have the option of coming through the mudroom, small gallery entry, and then coming down the stairs. Because of wanting to ensure that the house was accessible to all, they did put in a small elevator. So it is nice to have that, but it rarely gets used. And then essentially your space is right there, because everything else you're seeing here in the plan is roof volume, and you don't even see it from this level other than just a little bit through this window here. What's really fun about the stairs is that because this is in an old mining town, they created a bit of a mining feel in how the timbers were assembled, and you'll see that in the photographs. Then when you get downstairs onto basically what we call the main level, that's where you come down and you enter into the dining room and the living room space, sort of this great room area, along with the gallery all along here, the south-facing porch. And then, as you will see in the plan, we have glazing all along the north side as well.
And is that where the views are then?
The views are fantastic this way, yes, because actually when you look out here, all you see is berming. You see just berming going up to the driveway level. So this actually created a really nice, intimate patio that gets the sunshine and also created a lot of privacy for them. But then the view is absolutely out through the north windows. So in here on our main level, we have the dining room, the living room, the den, a small dining space here for when they want more of an intimate experience. And then in the kitchen area, we have an island, sort of a fan-shaped island, which is really where everybody hangs out. Then this is the sort of the grounding elements that I spoke of earlier, where we have the fireplace elevation here and this back wall of the kitchen. And basically you can see all the way through. You have this great breakfast nook, and of all the spaces in the house, the one that feels most like you're in a tree house is when you're sitting in here. It's just fantastic. It's really fun. Wonderful pantry, some more back of the house ski rooms, our elegant powder room here, and then they did also have an outdoor grill, outdoor patio, directly off the kitchen for that outdoor dining experience, and a hot tub down here from when they can come in from skiing. They actually are pretty adjacent to the ski run. Master bedroom is also on the main level over here. King bed, seating, fireplace, and then master closet and master bath. There is a little tiny stair that's sort of tucked behind here that takes you upstairs to the den. This is that bathroom door I was talking about where we had to change it rather than swinging in. We changed it so that it swung out. And what's kind of fun here on this plan that you're seeing is this is a working plan. So this is a plan that you'll start seeing like some of the weight lines aren't quite where they need to be when it comes from the CAD drawing, but this was our internal working set that I'm sharing with you when we were doing furniture.
The master bedroom is not very large.
It's not, and that's because they don't need it. They're very practically oriented. They wanted to have the living spaces be as big as possible to accommodate their family and their friends. And you'll see that in the bedrooms downstairs too. The kitchen is large because they have 5, 6 people in there at a time cooking and cleaning up and prepping. And this breakfast nook is fantastic. You can literally seat 2, and you can get 3 people on the side there, so you can seat about 8 people around that little breakfast
glass.
mess. It's all glass, yeah, with a built-in banquette. And then downstairs, so then you go down to the next level. One of the cool things that happen is, as you see on this plan, there was just this empty space downstairs. And Steve, the homeowner, really wanted to have a wet bar. So we were able, in the field, something that came after the fact, to come in and add this really cool, tiny little wet bar, jewel wet bar, and you'll see it in the photographs right here. And it's just big enough for him, which is fantastic. It's his wet bar. And it allows him to be able to serve his guests here in the rec room. So you see a lot of big-sized public spaces, but as you look at the bedrooms themselves, they're pretty normal size. You know, we have queen beds, we have a king here. Bathrooms aren't huge either. They're functional, but not oversized. And you know, same here. I mean, that's just a pretty straightforward bath space, pretty straightforward closets. And this was the bathroom that it ended up actually being part of this queen bedroom. And we said, let's make this accessible to the rec room, the hot tub, so that we don't have to have a separate powder room. And I think that allowed the laundry room to get bigger, if I remember correctly. And then the bunk room. And this was an example too, where originally we wanted them to go all along the wall back here, but realized that maybe it would be better if we moved them around. So again, you're seeing some of our working drawings here in the plan. So this kind of helps you get a sense of the layout of the house. And then what I'd love to show you next is kind of the process that we went through when it came to the fixed finishes before we actually get into the furniture. So as we were putting together the designs, we did some renderings that kind of helped to show the finishes of the bathrooms. The tiles, you see the shower niche here, the soffits, the bench in the shower, the demising wall between the vanity and the shower with a piece of glass in between to, again, allow for as much light and openness to permeate through. We actually ended up tiling around the mirror here and creating a tile frame here, and then did a custom vanity that had, again, that element of nature coming in. It was a wheat shaft for the front sort of drawing of that folky type cabinet. And then what you see here, so here's sort of where we started. This is what it ended up like. We ended up doing the CAD drawings. It was a nice clean CAD drawing that would have looked like that. But when you're in the field, what ends up happening is you start making adjustments and confirming that what you actually dimensioned and planned out in the CDs is working in the field. So we're placing light fixtures, we're confirming where those light fixtures are exactly located, and then we will go back and actually update our drawings and send those to the contractor. And typically we'd send them on a different colored piece of paper. Because he didn't have CAD, we always sent everything to him in hard copy. Nowadays everything's done digitally and it's just tagged and bubbled. And so everything that you see here in red would have been edited and then bubbled when we sent it back out. So this is just a fun example of one of the bathrooms in the home. This is the powder room. This was sort of the little jewel bathroom. We found this great local gentleman who made our recycled, it's about 80% recycled content bronze tile that framed in our mirrors that coordinated with our wall-mounted fittings and our bronze sink. And then we just did a really simple stone vanity and then had a tile wall back here. The rest of the bathroom was wallpapered. And again, to bring down the ceiling heights, we kind of ran it up to what would be a normal height and then just had a darker colored wall covering above to, again, make the space more intimate, bringing the lights down so that they're at eye level. And then here you can again see the working drawing that followed and the red line edits that we made in the field. You know, simple things like the contractor had us provide for him in writing in the final CDs that were issued, where does the toilet paper or towel bar go and the hooks. And even though we had them on the drawings, it got even more detailed just because he wanted to get it right the first time. He didn't want to have to redo it. Let's see, I think there's one more here I'd like to show you. It's the master bath, just because it's got it in the kitchen actually. So here's the master bath. Oh, these tiles are just so beautiful. mosaic tile that the client fell in love with from her New Jersey source. And so we used that tile again to sort of frame the mirror walls. They each had their own vanity. His was adjacent to the shower. The shower actually had a tilt-out window up here to allow the steam out if they didn't want steam, and or to allow the shower to dry more quickly. Our bench and the tile details there, and then the adjacent tub that was also surrounded by windows. So that one also had edits in the field. And you can see just a variety of things, and simple things like we were providing the door hardware for all the drawer hardware and cabinet hardware. So we would have to go through and do our counts, and again we would double check it on our design drawing, and then also double check it on the shop drawings. And that's the one thing I don't have to show you, are all the shop drawings for all the millwork in this house. Essentially, we don't keep copies of those. They get sent to us. We redline, sign off, then they get sent to the architect, and then they end up at the millwork house. So that's basically why you're not seeing them. But that's also a very integral process.
Annette, it's real clear that as you make these changes, whether they're red line or you're doing an elevation or you're showing a custom detail, that it's very important for an interior designer to be able to visualize in 3 dimension.
Yes, it's vitally important that designers can visualize in 3 dimension and understand how something is going to be built and how something is going to be put together. If you don't understand that, it's hard to design it. I mean, you can come up with the intent, but you can't necessarily then see it executed into the field. Some of the other elements that we were involved with, and I'll just go through these really quickly, is the lighting design. Both the decorative, basically all the decorative lighting. So these are both ceiling fixtures, all the cut sheets, the wall sconces, dining room chandelier, if I can turn the page. And this was a custom piece. This was the piece I had mentioned earlier, where because it was all made out of big chunky pieces of bronze, we had no ability to adjust the height once it got installed. This was actually one of the most challenging pieces to measure for, because we didn't have a flat ceiling. We actually had a 2-point connection, and we had to determine and know some math to come up with it, to actually come up with the final set height. The final set height was great, but because of how shallow these bowls are, this is where we came in and actually added the lens after the fact. Here's actually an example of a shop drawing that the vendor did. And we need to know the weight. We always need to know the weight of all of our wall sconces and ceiling fixtures to make sure that there's enough backing in the structure to support that. Also, anything that you wall mount, whether it's an FF&E piece or a built-in piece, same type of thing. You need to make sure that you have that element in place. So that's a little bit on lighting. And then we also did, again, the contractor wanted to ensure that he had all the information correctly, so we put together a color chart. This was actually the first color chart I've ever done, but because we had so many different colored plaster walls throughout the house, we actually were able to use a earthen-based integral colored plaster throughout the home, which is a beautiful, beautiful finish. And again, we had many different finishes, and we had some wall covering. So we actually went through and did a schedule. It's funny, I hardly ever use wall covering, but she loved wall covering. So a lot of the bathrooms had wall covering in them. But so we put together a little bit more of a detailed finish schedule just for the walls. So
the back page of the sheet.
So the back page of this sheet actually goes through the spec, talks about the plaster and the specification of the plaster, and that it's a minimum of a 2-coat, and it's earthen based. Talks about the spec on the gyp board, what type of non-toxic VOC wallpaper paste to use, and then the paints and the coatings. So it actually goes through and talks about the spec in a more generic sense. So that was something that we ended up doing, and it actually was really helpful. What they did is they pinned this up in each room so that the painters and the installers would know exactly what went into each area. And then the last thing for fix that I have to show you is the plumbing fixtures and plumbing fittings. So we actually did a separate spec package just for the plumbing, and this was one of the first things we did because the rough-ins had to happen sooner. And so the plumbing fixtures and fittings were picked quite early on, everything from sinks to our underwater, this is actually a water filtration system, but we also had a hot water demand system. And what the hot water demand system does is it brings hot water to that sink immediately, so you're not wasting both the energy as well as the water as it's coming from the main water heater. And it shows all of the cuts of the actual fitting, as well as who it's from, who you purchase it through, the quantity, what bathroom it gets installed in, and any special notes that might go with it, and then the manufacturer cuts to go with it. Because the plumber really needs all that information so that all the parts and pieces and escutcheons and filters and all of that actually get installed properly. So these are the plumbing specs, toilets, tubs, shower fittings. And then in the very back, we also had some bath accessories, such as medicine cabinets. We had a couple of medicine cabinets that were in the master bath that were built in about 6 inches deep. So it added additional storage, our shower door specs, and then all of our towel bars and our hook specs as well. And then last but not least, just to kind of give you a little bit of a taste of the furniture, and you see some examples here of some of the fabrics. This is actually our entry palette as you walk into the home, followed by the living room and dining room palette. We won't look at that one yet. But because we had hard surface flooring everywhere, we got to do some great area rugs. Oh my God, we had so much fun with area rugs. It was just awesome. So we really did start the design, a lot of the designs with the area rugs, and then went from there. Basically what this book is this book goes through and shows the client every single piece of FF&E that's in the home, from throw pillows to tables to the duvet covers. For example, here the chair was done in this floral and had some piping, but then the ottoman was done in the woven fabric that you see here. So it's a good documentation and that final approval for when we submit this along with pricing, so that they know exactly what it is that they're getting. And it's also easier than actually trying to send them everything that you see here on the table when you're working long distance. I just want to hit on this one because this is such a fun product that we found. This is actually a mosaic, a cementitious-based mosaic. And we designed the kitchen room table around this. This is the one that's in that niche. And then the banquette. So here's what the table base looked like. And this was another one of those really challenging custom products because it's built into a niche. So you had to get ergonomically correct, first off, the banquette so that it sat comfortably. Added some cushions on that banquette, seat cushions as well as back cushions. But because the windows were so low, and essentially they would have just been right at your lower back, we added some throw pillows as well. But then for the table base, this piece weighed almost 1,000 pounds. So we had to design a base that was wood, but actually had a steel structure. So it was a steel structure surrounded by wood so that it could support this top. Those are the kind of details you have to be able to think about, because if you don't, and you put that top on there and you just did a wood base, it would all crumble. And you learn from experience. And the actual banquette itself was a built-in, but this was kind of fun. So here are the fabrics for that little banquette area, and we had some fun with the pillows. Like this one looked like a little envelope, and kind of mixed up some of the patterns and some of the designs just to bring a little bit of life into the corner of that room. And then the last stack of fabrics that you see there are the master bedroom. And again, think back to when I mentioned that she gave me basically a piece of tablet paper that had the name of each room with little tiny color pencil sketches of the colors that she wanted. And this one just makes me smile because she had blue and yellow and white as the primary colors for this room, and this is how it ended up. And then last but not least, we put together a document. Actually, there's two more things I want to touch on.
Annette, just real quick.
Yes.
Her color palette for the master bedroom reminds me of the East Coast.
Totally reminds me of the East Coast too.
So to her, that's part of
It's home,
that she
exactly.
brought into
I totally agree. It totally reminded me of like Nantucket, New
Yes,
England.
exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of two color palette, like just blue and white, and that's how it started. And so I got much happier when we could add in a few other interests, but because of the patterns, I think it really helped to make it much more interesting. It is. I love this room, and it's not typically someplace I would gravitate to, but I love how it turned out. It's a very cozy room. So then what happens after you've gone through this whole design process for furniture, which we didn't talk a lot about, but it pretty much mimics what we talked about in architecture. The furniture's easier though. You know, you're not dealing with site conditions per se, although you do need to ensure that all your pieces are going to fit on site. That after everything's purchased, we actually put together purchase orders, which I don't have for you because they're actually done on an online system that Associates 3 has. But from that, all the orders get placed. And there are, I would say there were probably easily 500 purchase orders on this project, easily, because of all the different parts and pieces that you're seeing. And then eventually what happens is that gets shipped to a warehouse. The warehouse has to receive it. They have to inspect it every time something is shipped in, make sure that it's not damaged. If it's damaged, they call us, because there's this funky little disconnect between the truckers and the manufacturers and the receivers. And that disconnect is that nobody wants to take responsibility. So the minute that they receive it, you have to say, okay, it got damaged on the truck, and then you do a freight claim. If you've ever had to done it personally, you understand what a pain it really is. So our movers do that, our warehouse does that for us. This is essentially this list, which is how many pages here? 40 pages of, anywhere from 4 to 5 items on a page. This is the comprehensive truck list that the movers use when they actually start loading up the truck. And it references both the purchase order, they get copies of all the purchase orders. It references our item number, which you see in the furniture book, you'll see on the fabric cards, and you'll also see on the floor plan. So everything is cross-referenced. So if anything ever gets lost, you can hopefully know where it goes. And so you kind of hold your breath a little bit because you want to make sure the truck gets everything on it that you need. Doesn't always happen. And that you have decent weather. We've actually had situations where trucks have slid off the road on their way, especially when you're installing in the mountains, and of course around the holidays, because everybody wants everything done before the holiday. This happened to be the case. We did a partial install for Thanksgiving and Christmas, even though the house wasn't quite ready, and then we did the final in March. So, you do what you need to do so that the client is happy. And then the very last piece that we put together is we did a, mainly for ourselves, because Lead for Homes was not yet launched, but we did put together a Lead for Homes report as to what we would have potentially received had it been an active rating system at the time, and then a sustainability summary. And this was something that we wanted to have just as a record for our house. And it basically went, for our records, it basically went through all the furniture pieces and indicated what it may have received from a standpoint of sustainability, whether it was, reduced material content or sustainable manufacturing, local manufacturing, durable, long-lasting, all the different qualifiers within Lead for Homes.
And how did it do?
We got, I don't even remember, which is horrible. I don't know, because the rating system wasn't out there yet. I don't know where we ended up. Really good, I think.
Was your team satisfied?
Yes. Oh, the team is thrilled. Yeah, and the client is still thrilled. And we did submit it for 2 competitions. We didn't win. We were up against, the ASID chapter always holds their annual competition, and we didn't win, but that was fine. That's not why we do the work. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.